Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of GameSphere. I'm your host Chris Ware and it's just me today. But I've got some news I'd like to talk about regarding Stadia. Now, for those of you that know me quite well, I'm a big fan of video game streaming. I think that's quite good. I honestly think that it is the future of video gaming as we know it. It offers supreme advantages over what we've got today, and it's not necessarily the case that I see it replacing all gaming, but certainly when it comes to AAA gaming, and I'm probably going to talk a fair bit about that today. But this particular segment was prompted by a piece of news that I'm sure many of you are already familiar with, is that Google, of course the company behind Google Stadia, are closing down their first-party game studio. So this has obviously fed into a widespread belief that Google is but a candle in the wind, as it were, not necessarily here to stay, or that maybe Google as a wider company or Alphabet as a wider company are not necessarily fully behind it. There are many people who possibly believe that there is somewhat of an internal struggle within Google between various corporate suits that want it to be more enterprise versus those that want it to be, that want it to have games in it. And Google have always had a peculiar relationship with gaming. Even on YouTube, gaming videos are actually put into an entirely separate category, and when gaming channels make it big, they actually are referred to an entirely different part of YouTube's internal support structure than other channels. So if you do a gaming channel, there's like a special support network within YouTube to support and help foster big gaming channels, and then there's another department that's for like all other channels. Like gaming for Google has always been like a really strange outlier, and it doesn't really necessarily know what to do with it. We have, of course, several years ago seen YouTube really try and push YouTube gaming, and now they have closed that down as well. I remember when YouTube gaming was launched, I was at the UK launch. It was in London in the Excel Centre, and they were like, it wasn't the biggest launch you could imagine. It wasn't the biggest launch, but then of course when it comes to these kind of things, it's all, it's really more for the press than it is for anyone who's actually there showing up. And then it wasn't that long, it was a couple of years, and then they axed that. Google, of course, quite famous for axing all kinds of things that they've done before. However, they don't necessarily axe very often paid services. Of course, Google Stadia, that's not to say that Google Stadia is immune from that kind of thing. But yes, I do stream on Google Stadia. I've actually been enjoying Hitman 3, which was released on the 20th of January, and I've been getting through. I've completed that game, and I'm replaying it now to do the unlocks, and that works wonderful on Stadia. Like the actual the actual process of playing it is like no downloads, and I have a moderate internet connection. Like I don't have a particularly fast internet connection. It really is pretty standard for UK, and it plays pretty flawlessly. Like the only thing is like if I can't like download Steam updates in the background, but that's literally all that I have to sacrifice really. Google Stadia, to be honest, on a performance alone, is great. I must admit, when it comes to the games, there aren't exactly a whole wealth of amazing games. Now, unfortunately, when it came to Hitman 3 in particular, Hitman 3 fell foul to being one of those Epic timed exclusives. If you don't know, Epic, the game store, trying to be this up and coming competitor to Steam, have decided to throw a lot of money around and get some exclusive titles or timed exclusive titles. For those of you that don't know what a timed exclusive title is, it's when a game might be released on a platform like Epic, but then a year later might be then also released on other platforms like Steam. And for the PC, Epic have the timed exclusive rights to Hitman. Now, we should be seeing Hitman 3 come along Steam in about a year's time, if the news that I've read is correct. And I will probably buy it on Steam as well as Stadia. Like, this is my favourite franchise going, and it will probably cost me a pretty penny, no doubt. But I've been playing it on Stadia because Stadia technically counts as a console and thus is free from the binds of the Epic hold on the rights to the game as such. They have developed the interface a fair bit. Like they've actually integrated Stadia into streaming, and it works really, really well. And the game library isn't too bad. Like if you are a casual gamer, Stadia is actually probably like a really good platform for you. If you only buy like 6 or 7 games, and that will keep you going for a few years, Stadia's kind of got you covered on that front. What might be interesting is to see if Google actually push for Stadia to be included with smart TVs, because when, if you were to buy a smart TV, put it up into your living room, and you've got your standard apps, you've got your Netflix, you've got your YouTube, and then you've got Stadia, and then you could just link a existing controller like an Xbox or PlayStation controller, pair it up to the TV, and bam, you've got a console right there, and that would be great. Many people have also criticised Google Stadia's pricing strategy. In the UK, I believe it's £8 or £9 for their Pro subscription, where you get 2 free games every month. And I must admit, when I was on the Pro subscription, the 2 free games you got were not necessarily particularly great. And of course, that might be down to personal taste. But the thing is, to pick out two games, just pick out 2 games is not like it'd be great if you could choose from a selection, but it wasn't. There were like every month there would be like 2, maybe 3 games that you'd just be able to get, and you'd only be able to have them for the duration that you were a Pro member. When I decided to stop becoming a Stadia Pro member, I lost all of those free games that Google handed me in the direction, which wasn't too bad because most of them I didn't really care about and play. To be honest, I would not recommend people get the Stadia Pro subscription. I would just recommend buy the games as you get them. Which is what I do. I don't pay any kind of monthly subscription to Stadia. I just bought the games and I play them on as I do. It's a great service. Like, I cannot deny it. But the thing is, with services like these, is they require confidence. They require end user consumer confidence. Because if you're going to get people to invest money, and we're talking about AAA games here, we're not talking about indie games that you pay for a £5. You're talking about Hitman. I spent £75 on Hitman. Hitman 3 for the deluxe edition, and of course I will guarantee I will get those hours out of it. Like it's an expensive game. It definitely is a lot to put down for a game, but I will get hundreds of hours out of that game, and I will thoroughly enjoy it. So for hundreds of hours of entertainment, £75 is, in my opinion, a great deal. But that being said, of course, if Stadia shuts down, I'd be interested to know what happens to the money that people have invested into that platform. But the thing is, you do require this confidence, because if you're getting people to put hundreds of pounds into a video game library, they need to be confident that library is there for them. Do you know what I mean? That the service isn't going to be shut down in a couple of years' time. Now, I've got friends who very firmly believe that should Stadia shut down in a couple of years' time, that people would be offered Steam keys or refunds should that occur. And I'm inclined to agree with them. I think that it would be an absolute disaster of PR if Google Stadia decided to shut down and just keep everyone's money. I think they would have the legal right to do so. But I'm not certain about that. I'm not a lawyer, in case that wasn't obvious. So it would be. I'm fascinating to see how this story unfolds. The Google have clearly put so much, infrastructure and money and effort into making Stadia work. But conversely, they just don't seem committed to the platform. Maybe they're sort of building up a very, very long, they're sort of building it up slowly over a long period of time, and people are expecting it to be this, all singing, all dancing thing to jump out the door, when, perhaps in reality it might be that it's slowly building up and then might become more mainstream in several years' time, and that Google are fundamentally playing the long game. When you've got companies the size of Google, they don't play by the standard rules of other companies. They work to entirely unpredictable methods of working because they're so big, there's so many moving parts to them, they have so much money, and they have so much infrastructure of the internet that they get to operate in ways that other companies on a more basic quarterly profit motive driven paradigm have to. So it's all very, very interesting to see how that pans out, and you know, Google seem to be acting in all kinds of sporadic directions here, which so yeah, definitely fascinating to see how this pans out. Google Stadia, of course, are not the only ones who offer video game streaming. I also stream on NVIDIA's GeForce Now, and I play that just simply through the browser. I have to use Google Chromium because Firefox does not, or last time I checked, Firefox does not support the streaming of NVIDIA GeForce Now. But also, as I understand, last time I checked, ungoogled Chromium, if that's a browser that any of you folks are familiar with, I believe that also the latest versions of that do work with things like Stadia and NVIDIA GeForce Now. But NVIDIA GeForce Now, you pay £5 a month, so I'm not entirely sure what that might be in American money, for example. It might be like $7 or $8 a month. And then you have access to a substantial portion of your Steam library. So I've got a Steam library of about 400 games, and about 80 of those work on NVIDIA GeForce Now. And they all work pretty flawlessly. I think once or twice I've had a crash here and there, as you might expect from many other games. And NVIDIA GeForce Now works on a basis of virtual machines that you just play through through your browser. You have access to not only the Steam store, but you have access to the Epic store. I think there's an Ubisoft store you might have, or Origin or something like that. And in fact, since Cyberpunk 2077, there is GOG offerings, games from GOG on there as well. Not all of the GOG library. I think maybe only 1 or 2 titles at this stage. I'm not entirely certain. And this is great. This is like a lot of people are playing with GeForce Now with a greater degree of confidence because they put some money down to play a game. And it might be a AAA game because I use it largely for AAA games so that I don't have to worry about hardware requirements on my end. So rather than buy a new graphics card every 3 or so years to be able to play the games that I'd like to play, being able to pay £5 a month is a lot less aggro. And also saves a lot more money because, of course, I'm not just comparing it to having to buy a new graphics card every 3 years, but more memory or a CPU or, general maintenance and upgrade. It certainly takes a bit of the weight off. And if I decide to change tactic, then, well, what have I spent? I decide to stop renting the infrastructure to play games and buy my own. Like, it gives me the most amount of freedom. When I buy games through NVIDIA GeForce Now, or to play on NVIDIA GeForce Now, I buy them on the Steam store. I could buy them on the Epic store. I haven't bought any games on the Epic store yet. I've got some of the free offers. But yeah, if there was a game that was available on the Epic Store that I could buy it and I could play it on GeForce Now perfectly well. I could play Fortnite if I wanted to. I've never played a game of Fortnite in my life, but the option is there. And if NVIDIA GeForce Now were to shut down tomorrow, I'd still have the games on Steam. I'd still have the games on the Epic Store. There is less trust involved in the process of NVIDIA GeForce Now, and there's a lot of trust in Stadia because Stadia is fundamentally a cloud console, and as fantastic as it is, and as the performance has always been great. Also, one thing about GeForce Now, in my personal experimentation of it all, is that GeForce Now seems to work better on slower connections. With Google Stadia, you have to have at least, I think it's like 10 megabits a second download quite consistently, and if it falls below that, it will just throw you out of the game. It won't try and persevere. It'll just be like, nah, you're not, it's not fast enough for you. We're out. Whereas NVIDIA GeForce Now, it will push through. It will push through because there are some games that you can play with some degree of latency. You can play, for example, some point and click games like strategies or Among Us, for example, which for some reason is available on NVIDIA GeForce Now. There are games that you can play with some degree of latency, or it doesn't have to be as twitchy. Not everything, but I play racing games on the NVIDIA GeForce Now, and in my experience, generally speaking, it works every bit as well as Stadia. It's a little less seamless, right? Because it does log you into Steam, it does log you into your Epic account, it does, so you do get to see a little bit of how it works, and it's not necessarily as smooth and sleek and sort of polished as the Stadia offering, but really at the end of the day, if you're playing a game, does that really matter? So, so I was always one of the big, supporters of the Stadia thing. I'm not the biggest fan of Google as a company. I'm very critical of Google as a company, but when they pull out something like Stadia and when I was playing, even Borderlands 3. Now, Borderlands 3, not the greatest game going, but it plays really well. I was thrilled with it. I was very, very, very impressed with how Google Stadia comes out. And you can see that it is the future of gaming. Not necessarily Google Stadia, but streaming. When you see the convenience and the performance and the fact that people who cannot afford high-end gaming PCs will be able to play AAA games on a budget. That's worthwhile to recognize. Rather than have to put down £300 for a graphics card, people now just have to put down £5 a month, which really does make the difference. Now, so I'm pretty quick to sing the praises of Stadia, as I have done throughout this very podcast, but even to me, with all of Google's resources and all this kind of stuff, it does seem difficult to really have confidence in the platform. And given that Google have so much money, given that Google, are such a big company, you'd think that it would be worth them keeping around these first-party studios, even if they were just standing around with their hands in their pockets, because it would at least not erode the confidence within the platform. It seems that Google Stadia is in part failing because no one trusts Google, because no one trusts the platform. And then when Google start doing things like getting rid of their first-party studio, that just erodes further confidence. And when this kind of sort of death spiral occurs, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get out of. Honestly, I don't see Google lasting more than a couple of years. If it gets past this stage, then I think that it's here to stay. But in all honesty, I think that, or at least it seems that there is an internal conflict in Google between maybe corporate suits and people that want to move into gaming, and this is just the side effect of a civil war that we have very little to know about within the company. I'd like to know your thoughts, so please do feel free to share them on the Destination Linux Discuss forums, or you can catch me on email, but I hang around on Mastodon. That's probably the best place to catch me. But yeah, I've been thinking about this a fair bit, and I definitely am a big fan of streaming. I definitely enjoy my time on Stadia, but honestly, to see how this folds out, how Google, it'd be interesting, if Google shuts down tomorrow, then Google, or not, if Stadia shuts down tomorrow, Stadia shuts down tomorrow. I would hope that I'd be able to get some kind of refund or Steam key for the purchases that I made on there. But ultimately, I think this is just a fascinating story to follow, all in all. I do like, streaming services when it comes to gaming. When it comes to video game ownership, I must admit that my heart is much more in free and open source games rather than AAA titles. With AAA titles, to me, that it's very, I do not have that passion of ownership. I don't care to own them. I'm happy fundamentally renting them, which is what you might get out of which is to me the way that you should be looking at streaming services. Don't look at them as buying a game. Look at them as renting a game. And of course, putting down the £75 for Hitman 3 and only getting a couple of years playtime out of it is probably not the greatest deal for me. But hey, such is life, isn't it? But yes, those are just my thoughts, and on to the ad break. This episode of GameSphere is brought to you by, of course, DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean recently announced their new app platform service, which is a solution to build modern cloud-native apps. With App Platform, you can build, deploy, and scale apps and static websites quickly and easily. Simply point to your GitHub repository and let the App Platform do all the heavy lifting. It has support for Node.js, Python, Go, PHP, Ruby, static sites, and Docker. DigitalOcean runs their app platform on their own infrastructure, so your costs are significantly lower than with other products. Plus, they built this new app platform on top of DigitalOcean Kubernetes, providing a smoother migration path so you can take more control over your infrastructure setup. As a listener of the GameSphere podcast and the Destination Linux network, you can get started for free. And in fact, better than free, because DigitalOcean is giving you $100 of credit when you sign up by going to do.co/DLN. That's do.co/DLN. We want to thank DigitalOcean for sponsoring this episode of the GameSphere and for generally being kind to the Destination Linux network. Thank you very much, DigitalOcean. That's wonderful. So yeah, I'm obviously going to be talking about Hitman 3 today. It was released on January the 20th, and it's available in the Epic Store for the PC. It's available on various consoles and Google Stadia. I've been playing the Stadia version and thoroughly enjoying it. This is the third in a trilogy known as The World of Assassination, where it reaches its, I'm not going to say thrilling conclusion, because when it comes to Hitman games, the plot is never what the games are really about. There are lovely little mini stories within each of the levels of the Hitman game, but fundamentally speaking, without giving too much away, the story pans out as you might expect for a Hitman story. The game itself is what we like. It's expected, right? Like, you've got the first two games with the mechanics and the level design that they are, and Hitman 3 carries this on. It's a little bit darker. It's a little bit grittier than the two that come before it. There are some brighter levels in there. There's a nice bright level in Dubai. There's a nice bright level in Argentina, but there are some darker and gritty levels. There's a quite a dark and gritty level in Dartmoor here in the UK. There's a pretty dark and gritty level in Berlin at a rave. There's a pretty I'm missing a level. But I can't think of it right now. But it comes with about half a dozen levels to play, and they're all pretty good. Like, I had a good time with all of them. I've played the game from beginning to end once. I'm now in the process of going through again to complete the unlocks, and it's a wonderful way how the game plays. Right, so you play through the game, and you are an assassin. You have each level is a pretty large, expansive level with a lot going on. Hit 47, the main character, jet sets around the world, assassinating various interesting and interesting folks. But yeah, you get given a large sandbox level. Sometimes it's a town, sometimes it's like a giant mansion. Sometimes it's like a hotel. There's many different situations for a level, but they're always pretty big. There's always a lot going on. There's always dozens of ways to complete each and every level, which is where it gets a lot of its replayability from. All in all, it's incredibly well designed. It looks beautiful. Like, the lighting is beautiful. Even the cinematic, like, it's not the most cinematic games, but they throw in a little bit of cinematic, like, not necessarily cutscenes, but moments, little small moments within levels here and there. But yeah, you get given a big get given like a small town or a village or something with a lot going on. You get given usually one target or two targets, three targets. Maybe you have to retrieve some secret documents. and then you get let loose. You get to approach the objectives any way you wish, and as long as you complete them, as long as you kill who needs to be killed, you sometimes have to pick up some secret documents or whatever. Once you've completed your objectives, it doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't funnel you down a corridor. You get it's completely open ended, and once you start unlocking equipment, there are multiple ways. You might unlock a sniper rifle so you can kill your targets from afar. You might unlock certain explosive devices that you can attach to their car. You might unlock electrocution devices or poisons. You might be able to unlock a secret location where you can sneak in, where you might be able to, jury rig something up so that it's an accident. There's one level in actually the first of the trilogy where there's like a handrail, a metal handrail, going along the top of a balcony, which you can actually choose to electrify. You can actually get the wiring from a nearby lamp, and you can then sort of wire it around the metallic handrail so that when your target comes along and puts their hand on the handrail, they will electrocute themselves and die, which, is a very creative way of completing that particular level. It's more of what we expect. Hitman 3 is, if you've played any of the previous games in the trilogy, which quite often go on sale, and they're definitely worth picking up in my personal opinion. Like this is my favorite franchise of video games ever. We're talking about here. This is where my heart truly is when it comes to video games. This is my, this would be my game of the year, as it were. Most likely, there would have to be some pretty stonking games coming out this year for me to for this to be upended. But yeah, it's all pretty grand. It's incredibly well designed. It's fitting within this. There's not really anything in the way of unexpected surprises here. There's nothing in this game that I would say is worse. The plot is quite good. Like the story, like I was following along the story, like it was interesting. It's just like that's not what you're here for. I've watched the story. I will probably never watch those cutscenes again. You get given levels. There is no online component. When Hitman 2, the second in the trilogy, launched, they had a ghost mode where you actually were given like a scenario where you had to kill 5 different people, and whoever killed all 5 of them first was the winner. That was really good, and there are actually videos of this playing on my gaming channel. They actually closed the servers for that mode now, which I think is a little bit of a shame. But it was always a bit of an experiment to have multiplayer Hitman. This is a truly single player experience, absolutely. But yeah, just to go jet setting around the world and to explore and enjoy and get lost in all these wonderful levels. You get to use disguises. That's one of the core mechanics of the game. Like the disguise mechanic's great. You get to pretend to be all kinds of other people, and that kind of intertwines comedy within the game as well. There is it's sort of difficult to describe. If again going back to the second in the trilogy, 47, the main character, can actually dress himself as a realtor and actually show one of his targets around a house. But he's doing it in such a way, like not like a realtor, but like someone pretending to be a realtor, and all these subtle little ways in which the game sort of comes out is absolutely amazing. The writing is great, the game design is great. Truly, there is they have perfected the procedure of making this game, the formula that they've got here. I do hope that they continue to make new games, and I suspect they will. Now, what's interesting about this trilogy known as the World of Assassination is that it's 3 different games, all made by IO Interactive, but published by 3 different publishers. The first was published by Square Enix, and they actually had a Windows build and a Linux build brought out on Steam. The second game was published by Warner Brothers, and it was brought out Windows version on Steam. Then there was the third, which was self-published, because that was when IO Interactive decided that they were going to not continue with Warner Brothers, not continue with Square Enix. They're going to publish themselves. And then Epic Game Store came to them. They came to them with the great offer of exclusivity on their game store, so like a timed exclusive. So they're going to release their game on the Epic Store, or are releasing their game on the Epic Store a year ahead of a release on Steam, which I believe is again a Windows-only platform, as well as consoles, as all of the games on the trilogy have, and including Stadia, which I suppose Stadia is a console, but it is a console that you can play on PC. So it's even within like a small contained trilogy, which, as I understand it, was not necessarily going to be a trilogy when the first game came out. I believe it does it definitely does set itself up for a sequel, but it's unclear as to whether or not they had sort of created this World of Assassination collection for the games. Overall, this game was fundamentally everything that I expected, everything that I wanted, and I'm thrilled. Obviously, I don't do scores or ratings on this show, but if I did, it would probably be, right up there with the top. Yeah, I'm thrilled. Really good game. I don't know if I'd recommend it to everyone, though. That's the thing. The Hitman franchise it's not a game that is going to appeal to everyone. It does require patience. It does require a willingness to sort of learn and adapt. And, you can't be one of those people that's afraid to fail, because you're going to fail a lot in this game. And that's kind of part of the fun. It's like, you see a target, you think there's an opportunity. Oh, okay, you're going to run up, push him over the balcony. Yeah, that'll do it. Make it look like an accident. And then suddenly, oh no, there's someone hiding behind the corner or whatever, And because of the complex ways the levels are designed, these things can pan out differently every time you play the game. It's really quite well done, in my opinion. So if it sounds like a game that might appeal to you, give it a go. If you're not sure, I do believe that it goes on, some of the earlier ones in the trilogy go on sale quite often, but also I think there's like a demo level that you can try for free on Steam, so have a gander. For those of you on Linux, it does run, or at least the first two, Hitman 1 and 2, run perfectly in Proton. Actually, the first one has a native Linux build, but yeah. All kinds of terrible things can happen when you don't take care of your digital security, and that, of course, includes your passwords. The password manager used and trusted by the Destination Linux network is Bitwarden. Bitwarden lets you set up things like a PIN to easily access your password manager, as well as additional authentications such as master passwords and adding phrases to fingerprint security, all the things to keep your passwords safe. Bitwarden is the easiest and safest way for individuals, teams, and businesses to store, share, and sync sensitive data. Go to bitwarden.com/DLN to get started for free. To make things even better, Bitwarden is 100% open source. You can self-host and their code is audited. Go to bitwarden.com/DLN to get started for free. The $10 a year premium account gets you 1 gigabyte of encrypted file storage, 2-step login with YubiKey, U2F, Duo, Vault Health Reports, time-based one-time password authenticator storage and generation, priority customer support. So, from the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank Bitwarden for sponsoring this episode of GameSphere and for all round being a good egg to the Destination Linux network. Thank you very much. Okay, so since today's episode seems to be sort of streaming based, this is the streaming episode, I'm going to talk about a game that I've had a great deal of fun with on Google Stadia. Grid. It's a racing game. It's not like a kart game, like you're racing real cars. You can race minis, stock cars, pickups, sort of like Formula One IndyCar type things, like concept cars, performance cars. I think there's an Aston Martin Vanquish in there somewhere. You race along all kinds of tracks. You can race along sort of tarmac tracks. There are like country roads. There's not too much in the way of off-road racing. It's mostly like track racing, touring car type stuff. And it's, like I say, I've had a great deal of fun with it. I've been working through the career mode, and I'm not a million miles away off completing the career mode, which is quite vast. I've been playing it now probably since Stadia came out. It was the first game available on Stadia. Around that time, I had an itch for a racing game. I picked it up, and whenever I like, there's a few racing games that I turn to, but when I want an on-road, very simple racing game to just like, scratch that itch, Grid's pretty good. Grid's the one that I'll go to. It has that kind of very warm essence of almost like Saturday afternoon TV, where there'd be some like racing on. You've got a little bit of the music. Interesting enough, like they've got a lot of sponsorships on as well, which actually kind of adds to this authenticity of the whole racetrack circuit. Not that I'm usually a fan of slapping adverts on games, but like this, considering it's racing, does seem to sort of fit the piece. You can buy and customize your cars, although not too much. Like the customization is quite limited, and I like that. There are other sort of games that I've been playing lately, rally games, World Rally Championship and V-Rally, where a lot of the sort of the non-racing elements of the game are quite extensive. Like you get to manage a team, you have to manage so in one of those games you have to manage their motivation. Like if you lose too many races, they kind of get demotivated. Which is like all a bit much. I just want to race cars. I don't want to have to manage a team. And there's a reason why, like, FIFA and like and Football Manager games are like separate. Although I don't think you'd actually be able to make a game out of managing a rally team. Maybe not. I don't know. In all honesty, I don't know how much there is to say about this. You'll obviously, if you're watching the video version of this, you'll be viewing some of the footage, and I'll try and give you, like a solid example. But fundamentally speaking, and it's a great looking game. Now, I think racing games nowadays generally look pretty fantastic. But all in all, like if you want just like a solid racing game, and you happen to be looking for games on Stadia, I gotta say, Grid's pretty good actually. Yeah, like I like having my like team colors, which are the old green and white, and that's whenever you see me on the track, that's going to be the colors that I'm sporting. And I do actually tend to play these games on the easier modes as well. Like sometimes the challenge can be fun, but I quite like just the actual feeling of the cars itself. The multiplayer on Grid is fantastic. Like, it's everything you'd want it to be. And I had a great deal of fun racing with a couple of friends of mine who do happen to have the game as well. It's not widely owned, especially across like my group of friends. So I don't often get to play that game with others. But for the times I have, I greatly enjoy it. Like, it's really well put together, really well polished, very polished and fun. It doesn't focus too much on the sort of the mechanics, on the realism, but it's also not too arcadey. It's this nice sort of line down the middle where you've got that realm of fantasy. They don't overdo the mechanics of it all. They don't overdo the customization or the what I fundamentally see as the boring bits. But they also they don't overdo the arcadey things. There are guides, like line guides, if you want to take the racing line and all that kind of stuff, which you can turn on and off as well. So you've got a fair amount of choice with how much help you get. But fundamentally, it's not too arcadey. It's not too realistic. It's that nice middle ground where you can just drive. And I really quite like that. Pick it up if you're in the mood for a good racing game. It's available on Stadia. I'm sure it's available on other platforms, but that's just where I seem to be playing it. So that's about it from this episode. Thank you very much for joining me. It's a pleasure as always. Please feel free to either leave your feedback in the comment section of this if you're watching it on YouTube, or catch up with me on the Destination Linux forums or on Mastodon, or there's an email address in, of course, the show notes. So thank you very much for joining me. I've been Chris Ware, and you've been watching The Gamesphere.